We have Yunling Zheng, Regional Quality Director, Asia Pacific Cargill Investment, and for sure, one of the best experts in China, Chen Junqi, Fellow of Chinese Academy of Engineering and Senior Research Professor, China National Center for Food Safety Risk Assessment. Please, if you can come to the stage. Professor Chen, and my best friend from Cargill. We have been traveling around the world together. Last time we were in in Lansing, Michigan State University, and we went from Lansing to Detroit by cab, and she paid the bill. So, please, everybody has a mic. I guess we need. Do you have one, Professor Chen? You don't have. We need one more mic. Or I can stay here. Or... So this is. So let me pick up. So today, consumer trust is at its worst. How can we, as a food safety stakeholder, together, academia, company representatives, scientists, how can we communicate to consumer in order to help them to better understand the benefits that food can provide? This morning, Professor Chen talked about GMO. If you want to 9 billion people in the coming years. I guess, how can we do it? Can we do it without GMO? I am sure about that. So let's see, what should be done in order to increase consumer trust. So the first question is about technology, the evolution of technology. There are, nanotechnology, GMO, a lot of new technology that can help provide safe food, affordable food, available food. How can we communicate the right message to the consumer in order to gain their confidence? So what Cargill does, what is your viewpoint on if you can answer, what Cargill is doing, I guess in terms of new technology, you are ahead of many companies. How can you develop, new technology while keeping the consumer informed about the benefits that this new technology can provide to them? It's a tough question, I know that.
我讲中文、英文讲哪个更好呢？
技术，可能在座的同事，在座的朋友们不是非常了解嘉吉。嘉吉呢
You may not know Cargill. Cargill is the ingredient supplier. Most of you, we are the upstream. We are at the upstream of supply chain. So for upper supply chain, we have the technological progress. Cargill is something you're not familiar with. For us, we are closer to the agriculture. And for Cargill, we are in a position for the supervision of those the very origin of the ingredient. So we can solve the issue before it is manufactured and processed, the so-called nip in the bud, for slaughtering of poultry and also feed. We can do a lot of technical improvement to quarantine and to inspection, and also how to do the storage. We have the one technology, that is we use a high pressure for the pasteurization of the beef. It's really we're at the upper stream. The question is that the earlier you find the question, the better. So that's our consensus, I believe.
That's really good. That means anticipation is better, and start communicating about the great advantage that a new technology can provide is something that should be done upstream, because the consumer doesn't like to discover something new without getting, the knowledge and learning about what does that means. And that is, the mistake certainly that Monsanto did, many years ago, by doing something without keeping the consumer informed and making them aware about what does that mean. And as I said, what's the benefit and that this new product can address. So I guess academia, university can play a great role. Sometimes, you release information, but the consumer cannot understand them. It's so, the science is too high, and for the people, as we said in the US, it's double Dutch. Means they don't understand what the message that you want to convey. How can we adapt as university the way you communicate to consumer in order to help them understand what you say? Sometimes, for me as well, who is a food safety professional, I should read it 4 times before getting the meaning which is behind. What universities like Shanghai Jiao Tong University can do in order to make its communication more accessible for the consumer.
他们更好的了解食品安全这个话题呢？
问题吧，因为就是说，其实我从事食品。
I've been dedicated to the food safety for a couple of years, and I have a lot of experience and feeling and lessons. A lot of public, a lot of people. You may not, if you are not trained for that field, you may be a layman. However, according to academician Mr. Chen, he mentioned that a certain newspaper or coverage. The question is, what can we eat and what are the safe food for us? This is a similar question put forward by academician Mr. Chen Junshi this morning. When we go to the wet market or groceries, we don't know what kind of food to put to the basket so that I can feel relieved and safer for my kids and for my family, for the daily, the necessary nutrients demand. I'm trained, I'm educated for food science. So for me, as a professional, I believe it's not something miserable. In China, in universities, we are doing a lot of research. It looks like it's just a paper-driven. You are asked to publicize certain papers, so that you can earn the respect from the international peers. However, some of the papers or theses are theory-based for food, maybe for food safety, biological issues. We are paying more attention to bacteria and the specific conditions. What are the physical and the chemical reaction, and what are the what kind of competition it can get to compete with a human being, etc., etc. A lot of those studies or papers, if you share those papers content to the common people on the street, they don't have interest in it at all because it's too theoretical and scientific. Well, for us, we have certain trials in Shanghai Jiao Tong University. We have a Lu Boxun Food Safety Research Center. For this center, we did a lot of training on a regular basis. We have certain seminars or trainings to food manufacturers, and also we conducted certain consultancy services to the whole society. and hopefully, and we can get contact to media. And Mr. Chen, academician of a Chinese Academy of Engineering, they have a lot of report. And for example, for the hot topic, we can invite the media to and share our information with them, our communication. With this communication interaction, gradually, for the research people like us, from these channels, we can contribute more to the public with the communication and the awareness cultivation and the knowledge sharing, etc., etc. I believe this is something we can do from the academic perspective. Thank you.
Thank you. I guess we are heading in the right direction. So now the question is to Professor Chen. That means risk assessment is really important, but risk communication is by far more important. That means how can we give the right information to the consumer that they can play a role in risk mitigation. That means a meat should be well prepared. In their fridge, they must sort out, product in order to avoid cross-contamination. That means risk assessment is important. Zero risk doesn't exist, but risk communication to consumer that can play a role in risk mitigation. How can we do that together?
This issue actually is like an extension and a repeat of my presentation this morning. So first of all, what I want to say is that for scientists, when we observe an issue which is related to food safety, whether it is true or false, we have to analyze and evaluate based on the scientific truth and have a result or opinion. So it's like just mentioned, the risk evaluation. Based on the result of the risk evaluation, we have to come to an idea, an opinion, to see whether it poses high risk or low risk to the health of the consumers, or there will be no risk. So for the consumers, from the consumer's perspective, is different from our point of view, because the information and the data the consumers get, one source is from their daily life, from their leisure talk, from their friends. So
It's just the eavesdropping without any scientific logic or scientific grounding, and also certain news. For certain newspaper people, they just want to grab the eyeballs to increase their exposure. So they want to use some headlines to be eye-catching enough. And we have the internet, we have the microblog, etc., etc. Those information are far from being true for consumers. Their viewpoint is a perception, is only perception, not the scientific conclusion of the risk assessment come to eve. So for the scientists and for consumers, they are split on certain question. There's a lot of gap between the two. There's a gap between these two group of people. This gap is something we should fill with risk communication and risk assessment. So from a scientist's perspective, we should, through the media and other channels, maybe your presentation, your report, like this today, you should share the scientific information in an accurate way to share it with the media or with the consumers. This is the mission of a scientist. If all the scientists can achieve this goal with the government's support, I'm convinced that this gap between the consumers on the one hand and scientists on the other will be diminishing or at least narrowed. For instance, 2 years ago, the CCTV, the China Central TV station, 2 channels. One is economic, half-an-hour economic news. Another is a focus. The 2 very influential news programs of our Chinese Central TV stations. They repeated the same group of so-called experts to discuss the same topic. That is the certain the additives, and based on those, because of this misleading information and the personal view, they believe that the kind of the acid, the fatty acid, is toxic. Actually, it's not. And the information to the medium is that the vegetable oil is very harmful. So to this end, really speaking, maybe in comparison, the animal oil is not that hazardous. So in Beijing, a chain store of bakeries, we call it Wei Duomei, make a declaration that all our bakeries are from the animal oil, not from the plant oil. We believe it's just a kind of a joke, just a joke. So when we eat meat, we have the oil. We know there's a certain calories here. There's kind of so we should not be misled by those kind of so-called experts.
The National Center for Food Safety spent 2 years to do Chinese how much trans fat every day, every per capita. We call the exposure assessment. So we select Beijing and Canton and Guangzhou. Those people exposed to the trans fat, the major cities, for investigation, for survey. I found Beijing and Guangdong, every day the trans fat, the upper limit is from the intake from only 0.5% among the diet. The upper limit by WHO is 1%. So, in fact, the Chinese intake trans fat is not so much, not so terrible, but trans fat is not a good thing. I'm not saying it's okay to eat more, but however, we need to make it accurate, correctly. Based on that study, our Food Safety Assessment Center conducted a lot of positive publicity, not to whitewash the trans fat, and through the CCTV, Central Television Station, the assessment center, the media open day, and to review, to upload the report, whole text, to the website portal of the center. It involves whether it's going to offset the negative impact of the 2 CCTV programs, but it delivers a positive message, a reliable message, a scientific message. I raise an example. I want to say, as a scientist, we need to actively be committed into risk communication, but our current status quo update is not satisfactory. As I'm not a person afraid of the netizens' violence, but I'm 40 to 50 years old, and who still want to climb higher, and they are definitely going to offer negative comments, because we have really a lot of experts, real examples who was satisfied by the media coverage and is called by the media's violence and was pushed down from the ladder of the promotion. So the individual scientist cannot work. We need organization. We need a unity to form a collective group to issue the voice for the scientific risk communication. This is something we should.
Now is going to be your turn to ask questions. So it's time to open up question to the floor. Does anyone has any question to our panelists? Take advantage of that in order to get what you wanna know, about food risk communication, risk mitigation. There is nobody from the media, I guess. No. There is a question here.
Hello. In America, we fear food and science, and it's something we're afraid of spreading to the rest of the world. But we've tended to borrow authority figures to help mitigate that fear. So, for instance, the Orthodox Union certifies food, so they borrow the authority of rabbis to say it's okay, or use the USDA and borrow their authority to certify things as organic and okay. Is there a need for a non-commercial entity that certifies to kind of buy trust from one university and sell it to the public through food?
So, who's going to answer the question? You? Your mic is on too.
一个企业，我们确实是在寻求各种
all sorts of certificate or proof or verification. We set up the food safety system. This system is not, I said it's good and it's good. Who's going to view it? Because we are in the food supply chain front end, my customer is going to see it. My customer is like Danang and Nestle. They are going to review it. And the third-party certification. This third-party certification, for example, I set up a system. The system's operation, third-party company is going to review it. Meanwhile, in China, if you want to sell food products, you need a government license, government certificate, QS certificate needs to be obtained. And meanwhile, for your product, if the product want to sell to the religious group, you need a corresponding religious entity for kosher, halal certification. Just now, there's all these are been taken and been done. The enterprise we underwent a lot of numerous certification and inspection, but this is only targeting group. But we are not doing generally. We are not doing this very broad publicity. But the work is ongoing. I feel you raised this question. It's a third-party certification. I feel in China, right now in the current situation, certainly.
批准，刚才讲到的这样一个政府的批准，这个是 QS 等等，这是必须的。所以我想不再讨论这类关于第三方的认证的问题。我觉得在中国和一些发达国家的整个的环境并不太一样。所以这个呢还需要建立，还很不成熟，应该说，真正的第三方的认证，我说的是跟国际上的这样一个和。
With international third-party qualified third-party entities, not independent from government, independent of company, this kind of practice in the current environment and condition is very immature. There is need, there is demand, but this qualified third-party entity certification has not been established. I feel the National Administration for HACCP and HACCP certification, but this commission is almost like the National Administration of Quality Supervision. It's not third party. This morning, Yves Ray talked about the GFSI, Global Food Safety Initiation. This is not certification, but it meets the Chinese demand current stage. If the Chinese enterprise food companies can actively participate in the GFSI according to its rule of game and obtain this GFSI acknowledgement or recognition, I think comply with its rule of game. For example, benchmark reference standards. This complete set of things. If you use this set of thing for promotion publicity, you should have a lot of confidence, much confidence, because this is not a simple third party. He gave me certification. This is almost an industry rule of game. So I feel use this opportunity with this question. I talk about third-party certification. I feel GFSI, although it's not a third-party certification in the strict meaning, but its recognition is something I would like to recommend.
Any question?
So I have one question there. So I'm Frédéric René, I'm the Global Food Safety Officer for Danone. I have just two points as question and food for thought. There are two things journalists love is scientific controversies. So my first question is, how do you think we could harmonize also the risk assessment of the biggest, I would say, authority around the world and also locally? And there's a second thing is that we measure more and more, which is a good thing, but we measure also more and more very low level. So we will face an issue on declaring everything, is that at one point we will find absolutely everything in everything, and it's extremely difficult to explain. So there's also another point on regulation, which is according to the threshold given by the risk assessment, is not to publish number, but being legal or under what has been set as the official level. And then to my first question, if this level could be the same evaluated by different authorities, it could even be better.
For me, I think it's right. We need risk evaluation. And the basis for the evaluation is that for the consumers, they are more concerned about whether the food is safe or not, or whether it is hazardous. But for the hazard, for example, some bacteria in the egg, or some metal like lead in a cup of drinks, there must be lead in a cup of drinks. But for this kind of hazard, it is impossible to eliminate them. From the government's point of view, they will either require to eliminate the hazard. Because the goal, the purpose of governmental supervision and examination is not to eliminate the hazard, because hazards are everywhere, they are common. So what we need to do, what we need to supervise is not to eliminate the hazard, but to minimize the risk. So the other term is risk. For the risk, it means the possibility of the hazard to reach the consumers through the food, as well as the degree or the seriousness. Maybe I'm very professional, but I think it's very easy to understand. So what we need to manage is risk. What we need to do is to minimize the risk so that it is acceptable to our consumers. As you mentioned just now, we have many advanced means to discover or to find even a very tiny part of the hazard. So for us, if you send a cup of drinks to the lab to examine, for sure you will find some metal inside. But for the lead or the amount of the lead in the drink, whether it will be hazardous or not, whether the risk is acceptable or not, then we need risk evaluation. Just as I mentioned an example, through the risk evaluation, we can see whether the food is safe or not. So for me, through risk evaluation, this scientific method, we can come to a certain result. And then through the power of media to spread this information to the consumers, to tell the consumers that yes, it is true, there is some lead in this drink, but you do not have to worry about that because the risk is acceptable. And for the public or for the general public, so it means that based on the regulations, it is acceptable, it is safe. So even though sometimes it exceeds the required amount of lead, it is not hazardous. We need to further examine to tell you whether it is risky or not. So I think that now the hazard, whether it is a physical or microbiological hazard or chemical hazard, they are very common. They are everywhere. So we have to tell the consumers that it is impossible to eliminate all the hazards. But we have to know that for the products produced from the enterprises, we have to make the risk acceptable to all of us. And also, we have to control the risk in a certain level so that it is acceptable for both the manufacturers or for the consumers. And I will add something more. For this kind of activities, what do we do in the enterprises? In the businesses, the most urgent thing is not to do the analysis. For the good products, we cannot say it is good because of the analysis, but it is because of the production. I can give you a very simple example. For example, some fungi virus in some agricultural products. We have to control. It is impossible to eliminate them everywhere. What we can do is to monitor the change in the environment or in the factory, or to monitor what kind of suppliers have a higher risk of this kind of virus. So only through this kind of inspection, we will know the source of this kind of hazard. Then we will do a test. So actually, as he mentioned just now, when we do the test, we are not to eliminate the hazard. We have to rely on the regulations or the standards from the government to decide the degree of the examination. And for the microbacteria, for the national standards of the microbacteria, before the national standards for the microbacteria is very loose, it is very strict. The standard is 0. But when we do the risk evaluation, we later found that to a certain range, which is controllable, if we have some amount of microbacteria, is acceptable. For example, for the freezed dumplings, for the Staphylococcus, before it is not acceptable to find it, but now, later, the standard is improved to a small amount of this bacteria, which means that as long as the amount of the bacteria is within the acceptable level, it will be okay. It means it is qualified. So through this kind of standards setting and combined with the risk evaluation, then we can have a result. We can do the calculation. It is not just a simple decision. We make it a certain number or make it a certain amount to use it as a standard. So it is good to have a very advanced examination methods, but we have to set certain standards to deal with this kind of change so that our consumers can get the safe or acceptable products to guarantee the health. Now, 我们这边也有一个问题。Now, the government is setting new national standards or some risk evaluation system to minimize the risk. I think it is very helpful to recover the public confidence. And I also believe that many big multinational companies or other big companies will follow the standards. But there must be some small enterprises or some other enterprises which will not follow the standards, because there is a saying, wrongdoers will turn a good newsroom bad. So it will still affect the public confidence for the food safety in China. So how can we make the laws or regulations keep pace with this kind of standards so as to gradually really minimize the risk for food safety, so that we can really guarantee the public confidence for food safety? Although this question is a little bit beyond our discussion topic, but it is related to risk management. It is about governmental supervision or monitoring. What I want to say is still, as I mentioned in the morning, now in this phase of social development in China, we have small enterprises. We have even smaller entities like the farmers. So in the market economy, which is driven by the interest, combined with someone who have the techniques or the technologies to control this kind of small enterprises to violate the law. For example, they have a specific technological way to minimize the risk, but for some of the small enterprises, they have a support which is very technical or very technological, to not follow the standards. So this is some Chinese-specific phenomenon. For example, the fake oils or food oils. Because some oil experts said that it is impossible to transform the waste oil into fresh oil or the fake oil, which looks very fresh. So it is very, very special. It requires a very strong ability of technology and technique. So the Chinese people are very smart. They can do a very good job in this kind of transformation. So I saw some fake oils collected by the police stations. Some of the samples, it is impossible for you to distinguish them from the fake oil to the real river. It is also yellow, very transparent, and very shiny. It is really the same as all the original oils. And also, if you want to do the spectrum examination, and the result is even cleaner than the qualified oil. And also for the cooking oils, no matter what kind of method used to extract, no matter it is sesame or the beans, so they will have some hazard inside, but the hazard is very, very small. It is controlled in a very low level. But you cannot find this kind of hazard in the well-processed fake oils. So how can we deal with this kind of issue? How can we avoid this kind of problems in the market economy, which is driven by interest? We have many small-scale farmers or some small enterprises. Most of them are very small enterprises. Even the investment is as low as only $100,000. So I think to solve this kind of issue, we have to do it long term. It cannot be eliminated within only 3 or 5 years. It needs a time to develop. But for the so-called capital countries, when they begin to develop very fast at the beginning, they also have some problems. Of course, I'm not just to speak for the government. It is for sure that the government has a certain responsibility or accountability for the issue. But now the risk or the cost to violate the law is very low. Because we know now we are modifying some regulations or laws. It is foreseeable that there is one modification, which is to increase the power of punishment. Now different parties, different organizations are strengthening the punishment for those who violate the law. And especially we have a clear articles to punish those who produce fake products. And the Ministry of Health is also making a blacklist. This is also something only can be found in China, because we do not have any other country which will make a list of those chemicals which cannot be added to the food. This is only can be found in China. So now the Ministry of Health in China is now making this kind of list. So we are making this clear. So I believe that the government will strengthen the punishment measures against the behaviors against the law. We need a procedure in order to radically eliminate the issue. I think the good food or safe food is manufactured, is not examined out, but the government has the responsibility has the accountability to strengthen the force of regulation and punishment. But we cannot imagine that this issue can be solved within a very short time. So I'm not so optimistic to solve the problem by simply strengthening the force of punishment. For those very small enterprises, if you found the issue and if you make them bankrupt, it does not matter, because on the other day, they will emerge again as another small enterprise which will produce another type of food. So this is something very scorching for us. I'm not just to be pessimistic, but I have to tell you that the problem is very difficult. We have to realize the difficulty, so we have to strengthen the management. And from the government's point of view, they also need to strengthen the force of punishment. So I think that tomorrow will be better than today.
Just a short advanced question. So media can play a negative role, by spreading out negative buzz. Shanghai Jiaotong University is a GFSI partner for capacity building program for food operators. Can we set up a program in order to convey the right message to media in order to avoid them, communicating food risks the wrong way? It's just a training program for media, and the Shanghai Jiaotong University with the support from companies and the expertise of Professor Chen. Can we set up a capacity building program dedicated to training and giving and providing the right message to media?
Actually, your suggestion is something we are planning to do. Now our school want to do a so-called the secondary major, which specializes in food quality and safety. Actually, this major is for all the students who are willing to participate or join this course. They can get credits from this course. And if we complete all the courses, they can get a certificate to prove that you have completed all the courses related to food quality and safety. And for this course, we will cooperate with the Shanghai FDA. And in this part, their staff will participate in the course, and also, and if for the other students who finished this course, if they try to apply for a job in their organization, they can get a support. So far we have already prepared to sign a strategic cooperation agreement. So we are confident to do this kind of training in the future. The training is for all the people who are willing to learn something about food safety and quality. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I guess the conference is drawing to a close. I would like to thank the panelists for your outstanding contribution. I am sure that you got a lot of information about risk assessment, risk management, risk communication. Please, a big round of applause to our panelists. Thank you for your expertise. Thank you for your support. So, it's the end of the conference. This morning I said, there are two compulsory basic biological requirements that trigger pleasure. I said this morning, the first one is food. And I said I forgot the second one. I know it now. The second one is love. So that's why food and love trigger a lot of passion. And I am really pleased to see that so many of you were here today to talk about food innovation, food safety, ground protection systems that can help improve food safety management. So I would like to thank you for your contribution. I would like to thank you for your smart question. And I wish this conference was a fruitful day for all of you. Now there is a gala dinner, I guess, right? And please join us to the dinner, because as I said this morning, when you want to share a good moment with our friend, the best way to do it is around the dinners. So let's get together to have a dinner and share a good and interesting moment together. Thank you for your attention, and have a safe journey back to your country, your home, wherever you want to go. Thank you.